Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in today with us. You could be at any other place, but you decided to come in and join us in Dallas ISD to learn about positive behavior supports for your family. So again, I am Michelle Brown. I go by Michelle. I am the Executive Director for Special Education. I'm actually having an anniversary. This is my 1 year, almost my 1 year anniversary of being with the special education a few weeks ago. So I'm so excited that to be a part of the team. And of course, I have, if you were on the call last month, you noticed that I am bringing a member with me to join me in presenting. I have Courtney Matthews. She's a member of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. That is a group of parents that are representing each district area in Dallas ISD to work with me monthly on any type of policy, procedures, or concerns or positive things that we have in Dallas ISD. And I push things out to them. They communicate with me. And so they were wanting to be a part of our parent to parent connection meeting. So Courtney is going to be joining us today. Courtney is amazing. She is going to be providing a lot of resources that she uses in her home to work with her child using positive behavior supports. So let's dig in really quickly because Courtney has a lot of information to share and I don't want to steal the show. But we will also have an opportunity for you to ask us questions, and you don't have to, you can put information into the chat, or you can raise your, on the reaction bar, you can raise your hand if you need to stop us, okay? So let's go through it. So when we think about positive behavior intervention, we can just break it down into three ways. So, positive is just the characteristics of approving or accepting, is our behaviors, what we do, and an intervention is to change the course of events. So if I think about me, I'm actually on a diet right now because that COVID-19, like some of y'all, I was eating like crazy, right? And so, I mean, it was just reality. The refrigerator was right there. And so what would I do? And I was going in there and eating. And guess what? I gained a lot of weight. So my positive is that, I want to look like those how I was a few years ago. So that's my positive. I have this picture of me, right? And I said, when I looked this way, I was feeling healthy, I was happy, I was excited, and now I'm just like, oh, I got to figure out. So what is my behavior, what I'm going to do? So I am packing my lunch to work. I am exercising, I'm making time for that. And I'm reading good books about, that's the behavior I want to change. I want to be able to get back into shape. So my interventions are packing my lunch, actually monitoring what I drink. So if you look at my desk, I have this huge cup of water because I have to drink a lot of water every day. And my lunch is over there. So I'm packing my lunch, drinking water. I'm reading about books about positive, how to eat healthy and take care of yourself. And so that's my intervention. And not only that, everyone in my household is aware. So my 13-year-old reminds me when I want to reach for that cookie, he says, Mom, that's not a part of your goal. That's not a part of your intervention plan. So it's just that positive and that behavior and that intervention. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So when you look at the school setting, we think about our own, when we're thinking about our child, or we're thinking about just behavior in general, behavior, it has kind of three areas. The number one is behaviors are context related. That means behavior often results from what is happening in a child's world or environment. So a disagreement between other children, the number of children in a classroom, the quality of peer relationships, the size of the room, medicine changes, the difficulty in schoolwork. And then behavior serves as a function. Basically, what that means is that sometimes we see behaviors when something is happening or a purpose. So it might be a change in a classroom setting, or it might be change into a routine, or maybe a child is gaining something from a certain type of behavior. I remember when my little one, my 20-year-old, was very little, and it never failed. When I got on he was playing happily in this room, but when I got on the telephone, that's when all chaos broke loose, and he will run and scream and fall at my feet and just cry. And then I would hang up the phone real quick, and then I would read a book or do something. And so his function was that he was getting mom's attention right off the bat. And I was like, man, this child is something else. Every time that phone rings, he runs, screams, holler, and I get off the phone. So I was training, actually, I was supporting that type of behavior, okay? And then behaviors are influenced by events in the environment. So it can be transition, it can be a different time of day. And then what we need to know that behaviors can be positive or negative. And so we as adults, our goal is to work with our child or our children to influence what that might be. Okay, next slide. Okay, so with behavior, one of the things we do really well in education, and some of the things that Courtney's going to share, is that we have to intervene. We have to provide that support to our child. So skill training, it helps us to increase appropriate behavior. When we make these changes in our classrooms or home and other environments, it'll reduce or eliminate behavior issues. And then when we put those strategies in place, we either replace a behavior with a more appropriate behavior, and it serves as the same function for the child. And then we use supports for the child to use the appropriate behaviors. Okay, next slide. So some of the behavior intervention strategies that we use at school, but you can definitely use at home. And some of these, Courtney is going to actually show some examples. So I'm just going to kind of read them and then allow her to kind of like chime in and give you examples of how she is using some of these interventions and strategies. So one is being able just to stop, relax, and think. So before we react to our child and do certain things, we have to be able to just stop, kind of get ourselves and kind of think of why is this child doing a certain thing, what is they're seeking, and to help resolve the issue without overreacting. Preventative cueing, and I think Courtney's going to talk about that, nonverbal warnings, positive phrasing, and clear routines and expectations. Okay, so those are just some example things that we do in the school setting, but also when you start hearing Courtney talk about, you're going to say, oh yeah, I do that at my own house, or I didn't think about that. That's an example of a routine or a positive preventive cueing or nonverbal warning that maybe I can use within my own household. Okay, next slide. So what I'm going to do, Courtney, I'm going to turn it over to Courtney because she has a wealth of information to share with us regarding how she takes this information and she approaches it in her household. Okay, Courtney, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Courtney Bach-Matthews. I'm a special education parent of a twice exceptional child. Just a quick little snapshot of him is that he was in speech services in DISD through Child Find, and did that for several years into elementary, and graduated from speech, and then ended up getting on a 504 plan to get some extra accommodations as we were figuring out what was going on. And he re-qualified for speech. So we lumped it all together. he has anxiety, an anxiety disorder and a depressive disorder, among some other things. And so the pandemic has really thrown us for a loop, as I imagine it has for everyone else here on this call. And as I thought about it and looked back, now that we're 7+ months in, when everything shut down, virtually all my son's support and all my parental coping skills just were not available. Schools were not in session. So that trusted network just wasn't accessible in the way that he and I were used to. Supporting members of our team, his therapist, my parenting therapist, his speech therapist in DISD, that wasn't the way it usually was as things tried to get up running virtual. And so that was incredibly stressful for him and for me, because it was stressful for him. And behaviors started showing up. And then you toss on top of that the component of virtual learning and parent having to now help be teacher. And we were pretty much in constant conflict in our house in some level of intensity. And so this pandemic, if you want to move to the next slide, created a complete and unexpected change in every single thing. And so for my child, and I'll speak in terms of my experience in my child, he functions best with a tremendous amount of structure and routine and predictability. And so he lost control of all of that in every expected moment he had, because everything shut down and everything changed. And so when he perceives that loss of control, he melts down. There are tears, there's sadness, there's anger, there's anxiety, and he is completely dysregulated and needs me to come in and help him become emotionally and physically regulated again. And this loss of normalcy has been traumatic for all of us in some different way. And so my challenge as a parent is how to have my own experiences and then also create a physical and emotional holding environment for my son while all this is going on. So this is a tremendous amount of stress that we are under. And so what I've picked up on from the team that helps support us is to recognize the needs that are underlying my son's behaviors. Next slide, please. And so as I observe, I start to learn the smaller and smaller precursor behaviors that are starting to show that he's becoming dysregulated. For him, he starts to slide down in his chair. He starts to tap his feet harder and harder, breaking stretchy bands, whatnot. He'll get sensory tools and try and break them. His stuttering gets worse. And so if I look at these behaviors as a sign of need, I'll start running down the list that's on the slide. Is it a physical need? Did he eat enough breakfast? Is it almost lunchtime? Has he had water? Water is tremendously important, and hydration, so I'll try to push water. How did he sleep the night before? Is he overtired? Was he difficult to wake? Are these things that I can quickly intervene with? If that is not it or doesn't work, is it an emotional need? Is he just needing my love, my reassurance, security? Sometimes just being next to him for a while helps meet that need. And in virtual learning at home, there are a lot of needs that come up for him related to schoolwork that he's able to hide in the classroom. And those are tied into the really deeper emotions, such as feeling shame about his work, not feeling good about himself because he's not understanding. That taps into his anxiety disorder. He gets frustrated. He starts shame avoidant behaviors. And so that's all the things that are going through my head as I'm trying to move on. Next slide, please. So think for yourself, what are your child's early warning signs? And if you miss a sign in the beginning, it's, for me, you know, we just move on. It's nothing that I take the time to feel guilty about, although I certainly should. Not should, could. Next slide, please. So we've spoken about this. There's a behavior, there's a meltdown. I reflect the emotion and intensity that my son is showing as appropriate. Since his meltdowns are large, I certainly don't match that. I don't yell, I don't get loud and stomp my feet, but I definitely meet him with the intensity in my tone of voice. And you know, it looks like you are so sad and not feeling good about this. And I understand that. And I reassure him that I am here to support him and help him, remind him he has his strategies. And as his emotions rising, he loses rationality. So trying to convince him of anything is not going to work. So this is where it comes into holding the container of his emotion for him. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a whole lot, and how on earth can you fit this into the day? So as many times as you need to during the day, the more you practice it, the smaller the moments will get, and your child will start to feel better as they're relearning in this traumatic pandemic that they can trust in this parent-child relationship. That it is a safe place and you can hold them and contain them when they cannot themselves. And that makes the child more willing to attempt whatever it is that is throwing them off. My son is more willing to attempt algebra because he's in 8th grade after I've done this with him and gone through this process a lot. And he's not happy about it, but he will attempt it. So there is improvement. Next slide, please. And so my son, and I'm sure a lot of your experiences too, are involved in sensory input. And so when he is dysregulated, his brain can't control the input of his environment. So a lot of what I have, he's a sensory seeking kid. He was diagnosed by an OT, but there's also sensory sensitive. And I have a sensory box that I make available to him. And if you want to go to the next slide, then this is what's inside. And I'll just run through quickly a few of the things. A lot of us are aware of fidget spinners, so that's in there. This is weighted. It's not incredibly heavy, but it also has the sequins. So that's 2 different senses at once. A stretchy band. There are all sorts of different fidget tools that have buttons and clicks and you know, things that he can do while he's listening and attending. These are fabulous. Just the gel timers. It's very soothing to watch. And then all sorts of little squishy things. And I did have a kicky band for him, and he broke it in his last difficult time. Things you may have around your house, just a quick, whenever I get Amazon and it comes with this bubble wrap, he loves to take it outside and stomp it. And the sound of,
and Courtney, I like how you're showing things. Like I'm looking, some of these things I can just go down to the dollar store, like the little hourglass, you know, you can find those different things, or
Yes.
Not expensive, but it sure makes a huge difference in with your son, right?
It
Having-
really does. And even, here's bubble wrap. I
Yeah.
just, I have a closet of.
Can I have some of that, Courtney? I think I might need that today.
Absolutely. And one more tool. Oh, and actually I got this over the 4th of July, the poppets that you throw on the ground. That's really satisfying too. And one more thing that I recommend, and you can even get it at the grocery store, but essential oils.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to get into that a whole lot, but then being able to smell these, and my son also has control choosing what scents he wants to use. And so taking control of that choice helps settle him down. Okay, next slide, please. One thing we've been working on, this is an emotion wheel, and there's information about it, but I started out with this on just magneted on our door. And most children are just aware of the very basic feelings. And I like to say, and my son is tired of hearing it, a great big mad covers up an even bigger sad. So I had it on the door for quite a while, and eventually he started asking questions about it. And we were able to have conversations about some different words to use for his feelings. Brought it to the dinner table one night, and we had a family conversation about what emotion we hoped to feel tomorrow and what our strategy might be to get there. And so he has started on his own sometimes going and standing by it. And that's my signal that something's going on that he wants to process.
Courtney, for a child that is either a younger child or struggling with nonverbal, would you recommend pictures that they will use for for the wheel and versus words?
Absolutely. And that might get tricky with some of the words on the outside. But to even move between sad and mad is really, really difficult to acknowledge that you are sad about, not you specifically, but for a child to acknowledge he's sad. So to even begin with trying to differentiate that is a huge step in the process.
It's good.
Yeah, so next slide, please. Let's see, where are we? Okay, so now my son, as I mentioned, does his best, very structured, very routinized, knowing the expectations and pushing them constantly to make sure they stay the same. And so we've gone through several versions in his red folder. This is where I keep things of his, of home expectations. And as he's gotten older, those expectations have changed.
I think she's on the next slide. Who's ever controlling the slide?
Yes. Okay. So in the red folder, he came up with, and because he's older, he can come up with it himself, but you could also help your child come up with strategies to calm down. And so this gives them control over the ability to calm down. And he has gotten to a place where I can say, do you need your strategies? And he can go look at his list and choose one of those. Or come up with a new one too. But it's important that we have a reference sheet for him, because when he digs in, he doesn't want to do it. Next slide, please. This was a much younger expectation chart that we started out with when he was 4, and actually our pediatrician helped us develop it. And we came up with 4 behaviors we wanted to target and developed them into a positive behavior. So you can see no lying is crossed out. We changed that to tell the truth.
Why is that important to switch it from like a negative statement to the positive statement?
You want to acknowledge your child making a positive choice every single chance you can get, because that will help develop their self-esteem and help them recognize that they are able to make positive choices, because a lot of our kids have a very negative view of themselves. So recognizing and rewarding the desired behavior makes a huge difference. And you can see underneath, based on the amount of stars, so each day, each area got a star, there was a level reward system. So level 2, which is our basic expectation, is not a perfect day, but he got his usual privileges. And if he were able to get more stars than level 2, then it was extra special. And then that really helped my relationship with him, because we got to share something together. So that's a basic beginning expectation chart. Next slide, please. Now these are his expected behaviors at home. And as oh gosh, he's 14 now. They are a bit more complicated. And so we've moved to a token system with a jar. And when he performs one of these behaviors, or something that is not on the list, but is a good behavior, he gets tokens towards earning something that he desires. And so he can see the visual of the tokens in the jar building as he's making good choices, and that is also reinforcing and concrete. And then those are in his folder. Next slide, please. Okay, now the following.
Before you go on, Courtney.
Yes.
You know, I'm really making the connection between home and school. And, you know, how do you communicate with his teachers, his case manager, regarding what is working at home and what's not working at home? So when you're in your art meetings, you kind of already have some of that. You know your child the best. How are you communicating with that with the other stakeholders of your child?
Right. I've my son's been in the same school since 4th grade, and so I've developed a really good working relationship with his assistant principal and counselor, and I'm able to communicate with them pretty fairly. And he was very close with his band instructor, so I was able to let them know it's a rough morning. This is what was going on. Be on the lookout for this behavior. And then they would check back in with me. And it took time to be able to build that relationship.
Good.
Does that help?
It does. It does.
And I need to sign one thing here real quick. I'm
Okay, no
terribly
problem.
sorry.
And at the end, as Courtney is signing something, you're thinking, wow, this lady is super smart. She is super smart. But you'll notice she'll talk about like how she found out all of this and how she researched to make sure that she is being that first teacher and that first advocate for her child. So let's talk about the morning checklist. What is this about?
Yes, we have a morning, we have an afternoon, and we have an evening checklist in the red folder. And I went to Dollar Tree and I purchased the clear page protectors, and we have a dry erase marker.
Okay.
So it is expected that he will complete these checklists before he is able to do whatever he is wanting to do. And so this is in place for virtual school right now. And so if he has time after he does his checklist, then he gets to play a game before school starts. And if you go to the next slide, that's the afternoon checklist for after school. Oh, I don't know where that went. Okay, I have an afternoon checklist for once school's complete that involves planner, homework, organization, getting everything ready for the next day. And then we have the evening checklist. And I have to include in our checklists hygiene. And so, yeah, you'll notice a lot of that is in there as well.
I do have another question for you. So is this, I know you mentioned this in your red folder, but do you also have it posted up anywhere in the house? So for example, if I'm just thinking about my own household, and if I'm setting up routines and then if my son goes to my husband and say, hey, I want to do this, but I've already mentioned in our checklist, he has to complete these items. So make sure that myself and my husband are both aligned to what the expectation is. So we're not played against each other, but we are being consistent about what the expectation is.
Absolutely. And my son does try to manipulate. He really tests the boundaries. And so my husband and I had to learn to work as a team together. And also my parents are very involved. So trying to get, the more that the team can close rank around the expectations, the more beneficial it is to my son. And then the more expected behaviors we see and he's able to take control of for himself.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to move through these really quickly. I have a binder, which we'll get into in a little bit. As we were trying to get medications settled, I was doing a lot of tracking for the entire team. And so I identified the 6 areas where that covered the behaviors: anger, being overwhelmed, tired, sadness, irritability, and sleep. And I would check in and I would make note of any changes. So for example, you can see where some of it evened out towards the end of the month. I believe that may have been a medication change in there. And so that was a visual for me. And then I could take it to wherever we go and say, here, this is what happened. Here's how I saw the difference. Next slide, please. And then I also, the next few slides, to give him some control and self-reflection and self-advocacy, turned that information into something he could understand with the color-coded thermometer, so that he could better start to express what was going on for himself. So this one was brain speed, because he'll start moving really fast. And it's hard to see, but he came up with the description for each of the levels of brain speed. So it made sense to him. And it's divided into, I think it was morning, bus, morning, afternoon, bus, and evening. And so we would check in at night. That became part of our routine. Next slide, please.
Courtney, we have about 10 more minutes.
Okay, sure. Yeah, this is another one. Next slide. And I think there's just one more. Oh, okay. This slide and the next slide are just another version of home expectations and homework expectations that we went through. As you can see, he gets very complicated in needing to develop it. And we also had to define what is effort. We moved away from grade scores into putting in effort. And I can answer questions about that later. Next slide after that, please. And then what I did for school, because he has a lot of executive functioning issues, I would take the assignment and break it down into each requirement, so that then he could do a checklist to make sure he met them instead of just whatever the teacher posted. It was very simple for him to see what he needed, and that's less overwhelming. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the table of contents to my binder that I bring to any appointment and any ARD meeting. And I chose to include everything in his history about it, but your binder can become your own tool that you need to help take you into an ARD meeting and advocate for your child. Next slide, is that? Okay, and so I can talk about the binder a little bit more, but I also just included some links from where I got some of my information. Wow. So we're running out of time.
Courtney, this is amazing.